All right, what's going on, everyone? Doing a little Q&A here. So all of these questions are coming in from paid subscribers on Substack and then channel members on YouTube. So thank you all very, very much for your continued support. I'm going to put in the description the chapters for each one of these questions so you can bounce around because they're all over the place, which I think makes it even more fun. But there might be some stuff in here you're not interested in at all, and you can bounce around from one chapter to the next. I'm also going to go through this without any cuts, just because I feel like the whole point of this is kind of authentic, genuine answers, and the more cuts there are, the more you can kind of dial in exactly what you're going to say and all that. And I don't think that's what we're really going for here. We'll find out. If the reception is poor, then maybe that's what we're looking for. But starting out again, these questions are coming from people that are financially supporting this channel. So the first question from Snidley W. Lash. My apologies up front to everybody for butchering these names. Said, I'm curious how your request for additional sources went with the community and if it yielded new avenues of exploration. Also, how did your recruitment drive for researchers go? I thought there was a mention of 400 applicants. So this was, I got in over my head quickly. All of this, I'm kind of figuring out from scratch. There's, you can kind of look at other creators online and try to kind of follow what they're doing, but everybody's doing things so differently that it's really hard to like latch onto one thing and say, that's what I'm going to do. And that's probably not the best move to try to copy someone else. So it's really all from scratch, which is making this, it's really fun and exciting, but challenging in that sense. So I put out that call for applications. It was like 420 came in like under 24 hours, which was wild. I thought it'd be like 30. There were a lot that, somebody just saying, I don't know, kind of sounds fun. And then a lot of like genuine experts with published pieces that you've probably read, just because that's kind of what I learned is that's kind of how this industry works. When you're talking to researchers and analysts, unless they're like very senior at think tanks and news organizations, they're just kind of doing contract work left and right. So I got a ton of applicants for guys that I would consider experts and professionals in their field, have been publishing works, published authors for like 10 plus years. And they said, yeah, I'll do it for what I consider to be a pretty low price. The same essentially that I'd be paying somebody that's just trying to do it for the first time. So it's kind of a mixed bag. I do want to provide that opportunity for people to kind of break out and give them a platform because it's not just the existing experts that are knowledgeable on this stuff. There's certainly people that don't write anything that are very, very dialed in on various events around the world. So I think we reached a good middle ground. For now, what I've done is we've got 3 people that I'll call semi-full-time that started about a month ago. And what they've done so far is contribute research in the form of kind of video scripts and background information. So far, those have been videos on the Hamas leadership structure, some issues with Hezbollah, one coming out in the next couple of days about the civil war in Sudan. We did Venezuela, Myanmar, Philippines, Islamic State. And so they're just kind of hitting on different topics that they are interested in, their background is in, and providing scripts to kind of hit on different subjects. Like Myanmar is a great example. It's a crazy civil war going on right there. For me to spend the time to dial in and really understand how to present that would take, weeks, and it would still be a very amateurish take. So instead, we're leveraging these experts and paying them for that work, and then we can present that video. That's kind of phase 1. The second part's rolling out here in the beginning of February, and it's going to primarily be on Substack. And what we're doing is kind of providing them a handful of experts with like a weekly column, if you will, to write about specific national security conflict events going on around the world. So that's going to be kind of recurring. The plan is to make that free right now for everybody. And then we're going to work on some kind of additional access either to those authors, researchers, experts, or some additional content for paid members. And then tying in some sort of audio format as well. So it's a lot. But I also think there's a bit of a gap there right now. I've had some complaints recently. I've aired them on this channel, how I think some of the more mainstream news channels, they're not even, and even some of the alternative news sources, they're not able to spend the time and energy to really dial into some of these conflicts, which is understandable because they're covering everything. So there's, in my opinion, there's an opening right now to provide that and just pool in as many people, these experts that are so much smarter than me, all of them. I guarantee it. I just happen to be the one talking on camera. We can leverage their expertise and make it available to you and a larger audience. So that That's where it's headed right now. From Lee Corbett. Preston, what do you do in your downtime, hobbies, games, interests, etc.? What food do you like to eat? And what is the best state to visit for its natural beauty? There's other questions in here that get very geopolitical. These first two, not so much. But Lee, appreciate the personal questions. It's not easy to kind of weave this stuff into the topics I cover. Downtime for the most part these days is just watching sporting events. If I had my pick, it'd be college football, then probably college basketball, then pro football, and then we kind of fade off. I don't really like watching baseball. I'll watch golf. And then during big soccer events or European football, whatever the right way to phrase that is, I'll turn those on, like during World Cup and things. But I'm an Army fan, like West Point Army, but their sports are pretty bad, all things considered. So there's usually not a lot of national coverage. And when they are on national TV, they're usually getting spanked by someone like LSU. So it's not all that fun to watch. But just good games is kind of what I'm interested in. So a fan of sports, that's kind of my zone out, sit on the couch, do nothing for a little period of time. I like working out as well. It's kind of a stress relief. We got a little kind of portable sauna we picked up recently, which is hit or miss. It's a nice thing to step into after the workout, but it's really hard to clean and smells awful. So be on the lookout or be warned, I'll say. If you're thinking about getting one of those little kind of cheap in-home saunas, there's some drawbacks. Food you like to eat? Pretty simple. I end up eating the same thing like most nights, meat and vegetables. It's pretty simple. Thai food, anything spicy is awesome. But if I'm going on like a binge, like I'm going to eat so much that I feel sick the next couple of days and just kind of like eat for emotional reasons, pizza and buffalo wings, hands down. Eat like enough in a sitting to where it's a lot bit embarrassing how much you pack away. And don't feel good for a while, but that's it. Like maybe guilty pleasure is the way to put it. I don't have a sweet tooth, but I could eat pizza for days, not in a good way. Stas D, what's your take on the government's poor communication regarding the nature of the aid it sends to Ukraine, which essentially benefits the United States itself? For instance, Ryan Macbeth, Mr. Macbeth, points out that the U.S. spends a significant amount to recycle rockets and ammunition nearing expiration. Seems like an opportunity to send these near-expired items for a good cause. Furthermore, the funds used to replace these old items end up creating new jobs domestically. What are your thoughts on this? This is one of those, I've thought about this a lot with other media coverage of topics that I'm very, very interested in. And I wonder if it's just that overall our government is bad at communication. And when it's something that you're very spun up on and very aware of, you can see the shortcoming there. I don't know. Like if you talk about this related to another big issue in the U.S. government related to economics or social programs or immigration that maybe I'm not focused on nearly as much in my day to day, maybe there's still the same lack of information coming out, or vague is a better way to put it. But in this case, I agree. I've said it before. I think they've really missed the boat on the communication around why we're supporting Ukraine, how it benefits the United States. And to your point here, it's still surprising that an argument against supporting Ukraine can be we shouldn't be sending money there when we could spend the money here, because a lot of it is being spent here. There is direct financial assistance going to Ukraine. So it's not as clear cut as like that doesn't exist at all. But to your point, a lot of those weapons are being manufactured here. Or the ones that we draw down from existing stocks, we then purchase from U.S. companies, mostly made in U.S. facilities it's helping the U.S. economy in a lot of ways. There's been a couple one-off articles that really hit on this, I think, but they're not in major publications. They're not mainstream news. I'm talking about like think tanks and defense-focused industries. I don't know. A part of me thinks that maybe, I don't know in terms of why the communication's been so bad there, but it's kind of been start to finish. And I don't know that that's like an administration thing. I think that's a U.S. government thing for what it's worth, especially when it comes to anything foreign policy. We don't really address the American public with American policy. There's historically in the United States, we're viewing this outside of the U.S., foreign policy is very, very low when it comes to any of our national elections. People talk about it, make a debates. It'll come up in debates. There's usually like at least one presidential debate exclusively focused on international relations. But when it comes to like why people vote for one candidate or another, it's always at the very, very bottom. Even like peak Iraq and Afghanistan wars, those issues just were not really changing who people voted for at the end of the day. There's just so many more things that affect us very personally on a day-to-day basis. So I think a part of this also might be that in that vein, we don't have a lot of practice. We, the United States government, don't have a lot of practice effectively communicating these kind of complicated international events to a domestic audience and to how that impacts our day-to-day lives. I don't know. Maybe that's letting people off the hook. I know there's the other side of that where they don't want to inform us. They just want to make the decisions. Who knows? Maybe that's it too. But either way, man, I agree. I think the communication there has been pretty poor. Jason, war with Iran should be avoided if we can. Agreed. I think all war should be avoided if we can. With that said, it's looking more and more likely it will happen. How do you see that playing out for us and our regional partners? I'm curious if Israel and the United States will take on Iran together. I think it'll be hard to ask them to sit out after everything that has happened. So the piece it's really hard to predict like how a war plays out. I think just what we've seen in the last 20 years, it can take so many different shapes, right? I think for so long we envisioned something like what's happening between Russia and Ukraine right now. But there's also an argument to be had that the United States has been in a form of war with Iran via their proxies for 20 plus years now. So it is kind of an open conflict there. So I don't want to get into like what an actual war with Iran could look like because I think there's too many variables to where it wouldn't actually be beneficial. But I think that's a really important question. Would the Israel and the United States take on Iran together? My gut says no. And the reason for that is that relationship is so complicated that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think there's been a case in recent history where the United States and Israel have fought the same adversary together, like side by side. We've conducted joint exercises, but even right now, as the U.S. and Israel are both carrying out strikes in various parts of the Middle East, and at times against some of the same entities, we're not really doing it together. And if you look at, the U.S. war in Iraq started in 2003, we needed troops. That was major, right? We pulled in the IRR, the individual ready reserve, people who'd been out of uniform for a while. We were pulling in reservists, National Guardsmen. We needed troops big time to fight that war. And there were a lot of countries that contributed like platoons of forces for very specific missions. Not Israel. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe Israel had any role to play in that war at all. It's just, my understanding from that is that it complicates everything with our Middle Eastern partners. The Israel relationship across the Middle East is so complicated with so many different issues between nations that it would have been easier for the U.S. to just say, you know what, Israel, we got this. Don't worry about it. Don't even send advisors over here. This is going to make it messy. So in turn, I think it's hard to see a scenario where one, Iran does something that jointly goes to war with Israel and the United States at the same time. So if Iran were to attack Israel, I think Israel would go to war with Iran. I don't know right now if the United States is going to war with Iran over Israel. I don't know. And then if Iran attacks the United States directly and there becomes an open conflict between the U.S. and Iran, I don't know that Israel is going to say, now's our time, let's go. They've got their hands full, and they've got a lot of fighting still to be had in Gaza. The West Bank is far from secure, and Hezbollah is no joke, like at all. That's a very significant threat for Israel. I don't think Israel is chomping at the bit to go to war with Iran, even if the United States was starting that fight. So my gut says that any conflict with Iran would not necessarily include the United States and Israel fighting side by side, but could be wrong. That's something worth diving into. And I'm hopeful with some of these analysts we can get in some more speculative stuff like that. What would this war look like? What could an alliance look like? How would Israel play into all of that? Because it's very valid questions. From Eric, how do you see the Houthi ability to maintain this pressure over the longer term, months or further out? Any comments on their available resources, Iran or otherwise, or international pressure that might impact their actions? The Houthi thing is tricky because, and we've talked about this in a few videos, to disrupt international shipping, they just have to, what's the number, right? Is it one drone every day? Every week? Like, what is the number to where international shipping organizations will look at that and say, this is too risky for us to attempt? I don't know. They don't have to strike the ship. We know that. They just have, is it approaches by some of their fast boats where they can just go out there and pretend like they're going to board and the crew panics a little bit? Because that would be awful to be a part of that. And then the Houthis leave. Like there's a significant asymmetric advantage here that the Houthis have in disrupting shipping, because they don't have to put up like a physical barrier. They just have to every so often make it seem like a ship could get hit. We can't, the United States does not have the military ability to shut that down entirely without significant deployments in that region. Above and beyond the naval presence we have there now, potentially even boots on the ground to really weed that out. Again, because all it takes is, what are we going with? One missile a week? One drone every 10 days, and the shipping doesn't start back up. So that's a challenge, a major challenge. It does sound like a big part of Prosperity Guardian right now is trying to interdict a lot of the Iranian shipments into Yemen. But again, if that stops right now, how many drones do we think they have and missiles do they have on hand? The first piece we're working on for Substack right now that somebody else is writing for Substack is getting into that, Houthi capabilities and what that looks like going forward. I'm not sure if we have any good assessments on kind of their stockpiles, but they weren't running at zero, and like they were down to zero, and then Iranian shipments came in and they could attack again. They've got a handful on hand, and if they dial that back, instead of 20 attacks against U.S. forces in one day in the Red Sea, if it's one attack against a ship each week, they could probably stretch that out for like years. So I think what we're seeing there right now is it's not a clear solution. It's getting messy, though, in a lot of ways. So OG Diego. Hey, Preston, could you make a tutorial for using Telegram safely, especially for those interested in safeguarding their files? I want to use Telegram specifically for defense sources, but I'm worried about repercussions that I may not be aware of. I love this. It's like, of course, and this is a no-brainer. The short answer is yes. I'm working with some of these guys that are already putting some pieces together. One of the things we're going to get into is something like this, a little tutorial on how to use Telegram, and we'll recommend some channels, because that's one of the harder parts in my experience, is not just once you get in there and you start using it, it's just another social media app. It's not all that complicated. The challenge from my perspective is figuring out who to follow. And what is that account? Is that a fake Hamas account? Is that the account of the Qassam brigades? Is it a replica where they alter some stuff from time to time? The verifications, the verification stuff you deal with on Twitter all the time, you're not like exactly sure, is this the official account or not? It's like 10x worse on Telegram, but we do have a lot of people that are compiling those sources, and I think it'd be worthwhile to share how you could open a Telegram account, how to use that platform, some ways to get the translation to work so you can actually read what's going on in other languages, and then a handful of accounts, maybe for different conflicts around the world, kind of a running list of accounts. It's going to be dirty, right? Like the people that are on Telegram publishing the most, I shouldn't say that. There's a lot of very Western accounts there as well, but a lot of the accounts on there are there because they cannot exist on other social platforms. So a lot of terrorist type organizations, a lot of jihadi groups, ones that would not last long on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. So, know that, but I don't, at least as far as I'm aware, there's not any challenge in like following that content. It's not like they can steal anything from you just by following what they put out. But either way, appreciate that, OG Diego. I think that's a really good question. Definitely something we'll work on. But that'll do it for this Q&A. Definitely going to put more of these together. I really appreciate, again, everyone's support. It means the absolute world. The fact that we're able to start putting together a team and turn this into more of a business than just a guy talking behind a camera is huge. And your support is allowing us to hire them and to pay them the wages that they deserve to do some of this really important work that doesn't always get the attention it does. So thank you all so much again. But that'll do it for now. Thanks for watching. I'll see y'all next time.